Supplementary reader in English for class 10. Footprint without feet. This lesson we will see. Here, writer asks one question: can a man become invisible? This is the story of scientist who discover how to make himself invisible. Does he use or misuse his discovery? In this lesson we will see. The two boys started in surprise at the fresh muddy imprint of bare feet. What was barefoot man doing on the step of house in the middle of London, and where was the man? As they gazed, a remarkable sight met their eyes. A fresh footmarks appeared from nowhere. Here two boys started in surprise at the fresh muddy imprints of the pair of bare feet. Two boys are there and they are started the journey with the bare feet. What was the barefooted man doing on the step of the house in the middle of the London? And where was the man? That is no one man, but that the footprint is there. As they gazed, a remarkable sight met their eyes. A fresh footmark appeared from the nowhere. Further, footprints followed, one after another, descending the steps and progressing down the street. The boys followed, fascinated, until the muddy impressions become fainter and fainter and at last disappeared altogether. That is the further footprint followed one after another, descending the steps and the progressive down the street. On that the street there is a footprint and that is going to the descending. Then the boys followed, fascinated until the muddy impressions become the fainter and fainter. That footprint is become after that fainter and fainter and at least disappeared altogether. After that they are the disappear. The explanation of the mystery was really simple enough. The bewildered boys had been following a scientist who had just discovered how to make the human body transparent. And the explanation of the mystery was really simple enough. Here the explaining the mystery, it is the very simple enough. The bewildered boys had been followed a scientist who had discovered how to make the human body transparent. They are discussing about it, how the human body is transparent. And Griffin said the scientist had carried out experiment after the experiment to prove that the human body could become invisible. Scientists, they are preparing the experiment after experiment to prove that the human body could become the invisible. Finally, the salt and certain rare the drugs and his body became as a transparent as a sheet of glass. Enough it also remained as solid as the glass. And actually after that finally they get the success and rare in the drugs and his the body became as the transparent as a sheet of a glass, though it also remained as solid as the glass. Brilliant scientist though he was, Griffin was rather a lawless person. His landlord disliked him and tried to eject him. In revenge, Griffin set fire to the house. To get away without being seen, he had to remove his clothes. Thus, it was that he became a homeless wanderer, without clothes, without money, and quite invisible, until he happened to step in some mud and left a footprint as he walked. He was the brilliant scientist, and Griffin was rather the lawless the person. His landlord disliked him and tried to eject him. His landlord disliked him, and in a revenge, Griffin set fire to the house. Then he want to take that revenge. That's why that purpose he fired to his house. Get to away without the being seen, he had to remove his clothes. Thus it was that he became the homeless, wandered without clothes, without money, and quite invisible. He has no any remaining with him, homeless, then without cloth, without money, until it happened to step in some mud and left a footprint as he walked. He escaped easily enough from the boys who followed his footprint in London. He escaped easily enough from that the boys who followed his footprint in London, but his adventure were by no means over. He had chosen a bad time of the year to wander about London without clothes. It was midwinter, that is a period of the midwinter, and then he had the chosen the bad time of the year wander about the London without the clothes. Then the year was bitterly colder, and he could not do without cloth, and there the climate is totally different, and there is a bitterly colder. Then instead of the walking about the street, he decided to slip into a big London store for the warmth. Just he want to warm. For that the purpose he want to sleep into the big London store. Then closing time arrived, and as soon as the door were shut, Griffin was able to give himself the pleasure of the clothing and the feeding himself without a regard to expense. Now that is a time to arrive to close, and as soon as the door were the shut, and Griffin was able to give himself the pleasure to clothe and the feedings himself without regard to the expense. He broke open boxes and the wrappers and fitted himself out with the warm cloths. He broke that the boxes wrapper, then the fitted himself out with that the warm cloth. Then soon with the shoes and overcoat and wide brimmed hat, he became a fully dressed and visible person. Then wide-brimmed hat, he became a fully dressed and visible person. Now he's become a fully dressed and visible person in the kitchen of the restaurant. He found cold meat and coffee. Then he at the kitchen he found that the cold and meat as well as the coffee, and he followed up the meal with a sweet and wine taken from the grocery store. Then after that he take the meals as well as the wine taken from that grocery store. Finally he settled down to sleep on the pile of the quilt. Then finally he settled down and sleep there. Then if only the Griffin had managed to wake up in a good time, all might have been well. As it was, he did not wake up until the assistant were already arriving next morning, until he slept there. And even though assistants were already arrived in the next morning, when he saw a couple of them approaching, he panicked and began to run. They naturally gave chase. In the end of he was able to escape only by quickly taking off his newly found cloth. So once more he found himself invisible but naked in the chill January air. Now he wanted to run away from that the place, but they naturally gave the chase. In the end of he was able to escape only by quickly taking off his the newly found cloth. So once more he found himself invisible but naked in the chill naturally air. This time he decided to try the shock of theatrical company in the hope of finding not only cloth but also something that would hide the empty space above his the shoulder. Then, shivering with the cold, he hurried to Drury Lane, then the center of the theatre world. This time he decided to try to shock off the theatrical company in the hope of the finding not only cloth but also something that would hide the empty space above the shoulder. Then shivering with the cold, he hurried the Drury Lane and center of the theatre world. He soon found a suitable shop. He made his way invisible upstairs and came out a little later wearing the bandage round his the head forehead, dark glasses, false nose, big bushy side whiskers, and large hat to escape without being seen. He closely attacked and shopkeeper from behind, after which he robbed him of the all money he could find. Then, as soon as he found a suitable shop, he made his way invisible upstairs and came out little later wearing the bandage round his forehead. He just a bandage round his forehead, dark glasses, then full nose, then big the bushy sides whisker. Then he bushy sides whiskers are there and a large hat. Escaped without being seen. Then the Hercules attacked the shopkeeper from the behind after which he robbed him all the money he could find.